The phone rang at 10:14 p.m., face down on the kitchen counter beside a bowl of pasta I'd already stopped eating. I only remember the time because I looked at it twice. Once when it started buzzing, and again 3 seconds later when I realized it wasn't my phone. It was my husband's work phone. He'd left it on the counter by accident when he rushed out that evening. That alone wasn't strange. Mark was always leaving things half a room behind him: keys by the sink, wallet on the dryer, coffee cooling on top of the car. He worked in regional sales for a medical supply company, and his life ran on flights, client dinners, early morning calls, and the kind of constant low grade urgency that makes people forget ordinary objects. Usually, if his work phone rang after hours, I let it go. He hated when I answered it, not in a dramatic way, just with that mild, irritated laugh he used when he wanted to make something sound unreasonable without actually forbidding it. "Babe, don't touch the work phone," he'd say. "Clients are weird. If they need me, they'll leave a message." So I usually ignored it. But that night, I was alone. It was late, and he was supposed to have landed in Denver 2 hours earlier and called me the second he checked into the hotel. He hadn't. I'd texted at 8:21, no answer. I'd called his personal phone at 9:03, straight to voicemail. Then the work phone started vibrating on my counter, bright screen flashing a number with no contact name. Something in me went cold. I wiped my hand on a dish towel and picked it up. "Hello?" There was breathing on the other end. Not heavy, not panicked. Just the small, quiet sound of someone trying to decide whether they'd made a mistake. "Hello?" I said again. A woman's voice came through, low and hesitant. "Mark?" "No," I said slowly. "This is his wife." Silence. Then a tiny inhale, the kind that happens when your body learns something before your mind catches up. I straightened without realizing I was doing it. "Who is this?" I asked. The woman didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed. It sounded thinner. Careful. She said. "I'm sorry. I think I have the wrong number." "You called his work phone," I said. "Who is this?" Another pause. Then she whispered it. Not loud, not shocked. Just broken and disbelieving, like she was saying a sentence to herself that she couldn't make fit. "He told me you were dead." Everything inside me stopped. Not metaphorically. I mean, actually stopped. My hand tightened around the phone so hard my knuckles hurt, but the rest of me went completely still. My body didn't know what expression to make, what breath to take, what category to put those words in. I stared at the dark kitchen window over the sink and saw my reflection there, one hand gripping the counter, mouth slightly open, face gone pale. "What?" I said. The woman's breathing hitched, and for the first time, I could hear fear in it. Not fear of me. Fear of whatever truth she had just accidentally dropped into the wrong room. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I thought he was alone." My stomach turned. "Who are you?" I asked, and this time my voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded flat, focused, surgical. "Tell me your name." Nothing. I forced myself not to raise my voice. Raised voices make people hang up. "My name is Elise Harper," I said. "I am Mark Harper's wife. I am standing in our kitchen. I am very much alive. So who are you?" A longer silence. Then, "Natalie?" Just that. No last name. But it was enough to make the room tilt. Because strangers don't whisper like that over a married man's work phone at 10 at night unless there's already a story in progress. "Natalie what?" I asked. She swallowed audibly. "Natalie Quinn." I repeated it in my head once so I wouldn't lose it. "How do you know my husband?" Silence again. Then she said the sentence I think I knew was coming from the moment she didn't hang up. I've been seeing him. The kitchen got very quiet. The refrigerator hum. The tick of the cheap wall clock, a car passing outside. All of it suddenly too sharp, too ordinary. How long? I asked. My voice still hadn't cracked. That would come later, not yet. Almost a year, she said. A year. I looked automatically at the framed photo on the shelf by the microwave. Mark and me at my cousin's wedding 11 months earlier, smiling into sunset light, his hand on my waist, my head tilted toward him like trust had weight. A year. We'd been married 8, together 12. I sat down without deciding to, the kitchen chair legs scraping tile. You said, I began carefully, he told you I was dead. Natalie made a sound that might have been a laugh if she hadn't been so close to crying. He said, she stopped, started again. He said his wife died 2 years ago. Sudden aneurysm. He said it destroyed him. He said he still wore his ring because he couldn't let go. I looked down at my own left hand. My ring was still there. Mark's ring was on his finger in every picture from the last year. In every dinner with friends, every holiday, every family function, my body felt cold from the inside out. And you believed him? I asked, not cruelly, just because I needed the architecture of the lie. Yes, she said quietly. Why wouldn't I? That one landed hard. Why wouldn't she? He'd had the ring, the stories, the grief performance, the business travel, the carefully rationed vulnerability. Mark was very good at seeming sincere when sincerity benefited him. I knew that too. I just hadn't named it that way. I stared at the pasta going gummy in my bowl and asked the next question. How did you get this number? His email signature, she said. I've used it before if he didn't answer his personal phone. Why were you calling tonight? She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I knew this story was still getting worse, because it meant the answer mattered. Natalie, I said quietly, what is happening tonight? Her voice came back thin and frayed. He was supposed to meet me. I closed my eyes. Where? At a hotel near the airport, she whispered. There it was. Denver. The trip. The silence. The unanswered calls. He was not late from a flight. He was already where he planned to be. With you, I said. Yes. I pressed my fingers to my forehead and tried to keep my breathing even. Then she said the line that changed the shape of the whole night. I called because, she said, voice shaking now. He texted me that there'd been an emergency and he might be delayed. He said if I didn't hear from him by 10, I should call the work phone. But when you answered, she stopped. Because when I answered, she had learned she was not sleeping with a widower. She was sleeping with a liar. And I had learned my husband hadn't just cheated. He had buried me in another woman's mind and kept visiting my grave whenever it made his life easier. I stood up again because sitting still felt impossible. I walked to the sink, then back to the counter, then nowhere. Natalie, I said, I need you to answer me honestly. Does he know you called? No, she said immediately. Good. That came out before I thought about it, because now I was no longer just a wife hearing bad news. I was a person inside an active lie with a brief window before the liar realized both ends of it had met. I looked at the work phone in my hand like it was suddenly a weapon. Do you have proof? I asked. Another pause. Yes. What kind? Texts, photos, hotel bookings, gifts, voicemails. She stopped, then added in a smaller voice, I also have a ring. My stomach dropped. A ring? He proposed last month. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because my body needed some sound other than screaming. What did he say? I asked. Her breathing got shaky. He said he'd waited long enough, that grief had taken enough from him, that I made him believe in life again. I leaned one hand on the counter because my legs felt unreliable. Of course. Of course, the dead wife story wasn't just for sex. It was for sympathy, for devotion, for narrative. Mark never lies small if he can lie profitably. I looked at the stove clock. 10:19, 5 minutes since I answered. My husband still had no idea his two lives were now on the same call. Natalie? I said carefully. Is he in Denver? Yes, she whispered. At the hotel now? He checked in around 8:30. He went to grab something from the lobby and stopped replying. I thought maybe something happened. Something had. Just not what she thought. I asked for the hotel name. She gave it to me. I wrote it down on the back of a grocery receipt because I didn't trust my hands enough to type cleanly. Then I asked the question I didn't want to ask. Have you ever been to our house? No, she said quickly. Never. He said he couldn't even bear to live in the house where she died, so he rented it out. He said he stayed with friends when he was in town. I closed my eyes. He had turned my real kitchen into ghost property in another woman's imagination. Natalie, I said, and my voice was softer now because none of this was her doing. Not really. I need you not to contact him yet. She inhaled sharply. Why? Because if he knows we've spoken, he'll start erasing things. Silence. Then, slowly. Okay. I could hear her thinking, rebuilding the last year in real time. Every romantic detail curdling, every absence gaining motive, every tenderness becoming stagecraft. What do we do? She asked, and the helplessness in her voice nearly undid me. I looked again at my wedding photo on the shelf, then at the dark reflection of myself in the window, then at the phone. We compare notes, I said. The next 2 hours were the strangest of my life. Not because I was discovering my husband had another woman, because I was discovering him alongside her, in real time, collaboratively, like we were archivists sorting through a dead man's papers, except the man was alive and texting "be right back" to one of us from a hotel bar, while the other stood in the kitchen he had erased. Natalie sent screenshots first. The first one hit me hardest because it was so ordinary. Can't talk long. Flight tomorrow. Thinking of you. Wish you were here tonight. Timestamp 2 weeks earlier. He'd sent that while sitting beside me on our couch, one hand rubbing my feet while we watched a documentary. I knew the date because that was the night I had a migraine and fell asleep with my head on his shoulder. Natalie sent hotel confirmations, weekend trips labeled as regional conference, restaurant photos, selfies of the two of them taken in cities he'd told me were day meetings only. Then she sent a picture of the ring. Simple oval diamond, delicate gold band. Beautiful. Purchased, no doubt, with money from the joint account I balanced every month. I sent her what I had too, marriage certificate. Photos of us at Christmas. A video from our anniversary dinner 6 months earlier where he raised a glass and said, "To the woman who kept me alive this decade." Natalie went silent for a full minute after that one. Then a message came through. He used the same toast with me in April. That was when I sat on the kitchen floor. Not collapsed, just lowered. Because there is a point at which betrayal gets so layered, it stops feeling personal and starts feeling industrial. Efficient. Replicated. Like he had templates. At 11:02, my personal phone buzzed. Mark. I stared at his name lighting up my screen. Natalie texted immediately after. He's calling me too. Of course he was. He had finally realized one of us was missing. I declined the call. He called again. Then the work phone rang. Then my personal phone. Then a text from him. Flight delay. Don't wait up. Love you. I showed the screen to nobody and whispered, "You unbelievable coward." Natalie forwarded me his text to her from the same minute. Crazy night. Wish I was already upstairs with you. Same minute. Two different women, two tailored realities. I sent her a screenshot of mine. She sent me hers. No commentary needed. Then I stood up. Not because I had healed, not because I'd calmed down, because stillness was making me feel trapped. I opened my laptop and started pulling records, bank statements, credit card activity, airline itineraries, hotel loyalty account logins, because Mark, in his infinite arrogance, had all his passwords saved in our shared home computer browser. And that was where the affair stopped being emotional devastation and became something else, too: financial, structured, intentional. There were duplicate lives in the statements. Weekend hotel charges, he'd said, were client dinners. A jewelry store payment 4 weeks earlier. Flower deliveries I never received. Rent payments to a downtown apartment I did not know existed. I stared at the screen and felt my pulse in my teeth. I texted Natalie. "Does he have a place in the city?" She responded almost instantly. He told me he rented a small place near work because commuting after all the travel got exhausting. I laughed again, that same broken little sound. Near work, the apartment he had been paying for with our money. Work was 20 miles away in the opposite direction. I pulled the lease payment records. Same amount monthly for 9 months. 9 months. He hadn't just been cheating, he had built infrastructure. At 11:40, there was a knock at my front door. I froze. Mark had keys. He didn't need to knock, which meant either he wanted me to open it thinking it was someone else, or it wasn't him. My heart pounded so hard I felt dizzy. I checked the peephole. It was my sister Jo. I opened the door so fast she actually took a step back. "Elise, what happened?" I hadn't called her. Then I realized I must have. Somewhere in the last hour, maybe while forwarding screenshots, maybe while my body was moving faster than my mind, or maybe Natalie had triggered my emergency shortcut somehow when we were on speaker. I still don't fully know. Jo took one look at my face and stopped asking questions. She walked in, locked the door behind her, and said, "Start from the part that makes the least sense." So I did. She listened without interrupting once, except to say, "You're kidding," when I got to the dead wife lie, and then, "No, actually, of course he did," when I got to the proposal. At midnight, Jo took my laptop from me, looked at the hotel name, and said, "We can end this tonight." I blinked. "What?" She looked at me like I was the one moving too slowly. "He thinks he's managing two women with text timing and hotel elevators. Let's go collapse the timeline." If you are expecting me to say I refused because I am mature and measured and above confrontation, I would love to lie to you. But I was not above it. I was just tired, furious, and suddenly done being managed. We drove to the hotel. Not because I wanted a scene in the lobby, not because I wanted to hurl a ring at his face in front of strangers, because part of me needed to see him move in the world while the lie was broken, needed to know whether he'd crumble, deny, improvise, or somehow still make me feel unreasonable for bleeding in the shape he cut me into. Natalie met us there. She was younger than I expected. Late 20s, maybe, soft brown coat, hair twisted up in a clip that was coming loose, eyes red but dry. Pretty in a way that had no vanity in it. She looked at me the way survivors of the same storm look at each other. Recognition before trust. Neither of us spoke for a second. Then she said, "I'm sorry." And I said, "Me too." That was enough for the moment. Mark was in room 814. We knew because Natalie still had the room confirmation. Jo wanted to call the front desk and have security involved immediately. I almost agreed. Then I thought of the years, the lies, the dead wife story, the proposal, the apartment, the money. "No," I said. "I want him to open the door." So we went upstairs. The hallway was hotel carpet quiet, the kind that swallows footsteps and makes everything feel staged. Room 814 sat at the far end near the ice machine. For a second, none of us moved. Then I knocked. A beat, then another knock. Inside, movement. A muffled curse. Footsteps. The deadbolt slid. The door opened, and my husband looked directly at me. If you've never seen a person's entire internal architecture fail in one facial expression, it is hard to describe. It wasn't just shock, it was calculation crashing into impossibility. Eyes widening, mouth opening, color draining, thoughts colliding. He looked from me to Natalie to Joe and back to me. Elise? Not, what are you doing here? Not, I can explain. Just my name, spoken like I was the ghost in the story he wrote. I smiled. It wasn't nice. Funny, I said. That's not what you told her to call me. Mark's eyes flicked to Natalie, then back to me, mind already scrambling for a version that would hold. Listen, Natalie stepped forward and held up the ring box, the one he had given her. I did, she said quietly. And then your wife answered your phone. He went still. For one blessed, perfect second, the liar had no line ready. Then he did what men like Mark always do first. He tried to separate the women. Elise, this isn't what you think. Joe barked out a laugh so sharp it echoed in the hallway. I said nothing, because there are moments when silence is more humiliating than anger, and he deserved to hear himself fill it. Mark's gaze landed on the ring box in Natalie's hand, then on my face, then on the fact that neither of us looked confused anymore. And that was when he realized the most dangerous thing possible had happened to him. The women had compared notes. He took a breath, switched tones, softer, lower, the voice he used when he wanted to sound like the reasonable victim of an emotional overreaction. Elise, he said, I was going to tell you. I stared at him. About my death? I asked. Joe actually covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Natalie's face crumpled, not from sadness this time, but from disbelief that this was still the route he was trying. Mark's jaw tightened. You don't understand. No, I said, finally stepping closer. You don't understand. I know about the apartment. I know about the ring. I know about the hotel bookings, the fake widow story, the duplicate toasts, the money, the lies, and the fact that you built an entire second life while coming home to ask me what I wanted for dinner. His face changed again. The apartment line had landed. He hadn't known I had found that yet. Good. His voice got colder. You went through my accounts? I laughed. And there it was. That tiny pivot I'd been waiting for. The moment betrayal becomes accusation. The moment a man who lied about my death gets offended by privacy. Yes, I said. I checked the finances. You're welcome? Natalie stepped back from him like she was physically separating from a smell. Tell her, she said, voice shaking now. Tell your wife how her funeral happened. Mark looked at her with real anger for the first time that night. Not because she was hurt, because she had stopped playing her assigned role. He said nothing, so I did it for him. You told her I died of an aneurysm, I said, which is interesting because I was alive enough to pay the electric bill this morning. A hotel guest 2 doors down opened their door, sensed tension, and closed it again immediately. Mark ran a hand through his hair. Can we not do this in the hallway? No, Joe said. We absolutely do this in the hallway. What happened next was not cinematic. No one screamed, no one threw a drink, no one slapped anyone. It was quieter than that, and somehow worse. Natalie placed the ring box on the carpet at his feet. I handed him his work phone, And then I said the sentence I had not known I'd be capable of saying so calmly. You lied me dead to make yourself desirable, I said. So here's what happens now. When you get back, you don't come home. You don't touch the accounts. You don't move money. You don't delete anything. My lawyer will contact you. His mouth opened. Lawyer? Yes, I said, because you used marital funds to support an undisclosed apartment and proposed to another woman while telling her I was dead. I'd like all of that preserved. Natalie looked at me, startled. Then slowly, she nodded, because now she understood too. This wasn't just heartbreak, it was fraud in a nice shirt. Mark's face hardened into something I recognized from our worst arguments, a kind of cool contempt he put on when charm failed. You're really going to do this? I looked at him and felt, with complete clarity, the final little thread of fear break. You already did this, I said. Then I turned around and walked away. Joe came with me. So did Natalie, after one final look at the man she'd been planning to marry. In the elevator, none of us spoke for a few seconds. Then Joe asked the most Joe question possible. Does anyone want to key his rental apartment? Natalie laughed so hard she started crying. I laughed too. Not because it was funny, because the alternative was shaking apart in a hotel elevator over a man who had spent a year narrating me as dead. The next months were ugly in the administrative way betrayal always is. Lawyers, accounts frozen, lease records subpoenaed. A forensic accountant who used phrases like pattern of concealed expenditures and commingling of marital assets, which sounded dry until you saw the total. Mark had spent more than I guessed on the second life. Apartment, travel, jewelry, gifts, restaurant tabs, rides, weekends. Enough that my anger gradually changed shape. Not softer, just clearer. It stopped being only about infidelity. It became about extraction, narrative control, the way he had used my existence when convenient and erased it when not. Natalie gave a statement voluntarily in the asset proceedings. She did not have to. She could have walked away and never spoken to me again, and I would not have blamed her. Instead, she sent every text, every hotel confirmation, every payment screenshot, and one voicemail where he told her, I still talk to her sometimes. It helps me feel like she's not totally gone. That line made my attorney go very quiet. Then she said, Good. Keep that. The divorce was not graceful. Mark tried every version of himself on the record. Regretful, misunderstood, depressed, confused, even concerned about my emotional state. None of it held. Not after the work phone call, not after the text overlaps, not after the apartment lease, not after the ring, and definitely not after Natalie's documentation. Sometimes people ask me what part hurt the most. Not the affair, not even the proposal. It was the death, the fact that he found it useful to kill me in conversation, to take my life, simplify it into a tragic anecdote, and use my absence to deepen his presence somewhere else. That is a specific kind of cruelty, a boring one almost, clean enough to tell over appetizers, portable, efficient. My wife died. And suddenly, no one asks why you can't commit cleanly, why you still wear a ring, why you need tenderness on demand. The thing is, he almost got away with it. If that woman had called his personal phone, he could have ignored it. If she'd reached voicemail, maybe she would have waited. If I had let the work phone ring, maybe I would have still been in my kitchen the next morning, married to a man who had given me a eulogy in another city. But I answered. That was it. A tiny domestic decision, a buzzing phone, a bowl of cold pasta, and a stranger whispering, He told me you were dead. I still have the work phone voicemail from the legal process, The one where the hotel's hallway camera shows the moment he opened the door and saw us both standing there. Not the video itself, just the timestamp written into the report. 12:18 a.m. That's the exact minute my husband's second life stopped being curated and became evidence. I don't think about him much anymore. But sometimes, when my phone rings late at night, I still feel that first cold second before I answer. Then I remind myself, the worst thing already called, and I answered it.